What's up, y'all, and welcome back to the Michael Experience Podcast. I am your orator and originator, Michael, and these are my thoughts, my life, my way. So, as we continue to discuss some of the hardest lessons, the hardest life lessons that I feel I've had to go through, but also that I believe you will go through if you haven't already or are going through, I want to talk about this idea of happiness. And happiness has been one of those things that I think most people will say that they've been chasing their whole lives, but very rarely seem to find out what it really is. And I think if you ask different people, just as a matter of getting perspective or getting clarity on, some of the things that can make up your happiness, you realize that it is so different and it is so uniquely individual to those specific people. Because if you've ever tried to duplicate what somebody else's happiness is, you will realize that it just does not feel the same. It just does not feel the same. And so I want to discuss. I believe that for me, I would look at success in terms of happiness. I would look at success in terms of achievement instead of fulfillment. And I find that this is common as a person who advises people in life, but also a person that advises people in career, that success is often the promotion. It is getting the title. It is winning first place. It is being the best in the company or region or market rankings. It is that thing for people. It is getting the salary. It is getting people to cheer you on. It is getting to be seen and your name spoken in rooms. I would say that a lot of people would look at success in terms of achievements instead of fulfillment. Because what do those things do for you at the end of the day, right? Yes, money can help you live comfortably in a matter of speaking, of course. You have more of it, but what if you don't know what to do with it? What if you don't know what to do with it? And what if you are just spending it to do things that have no real meaning in them? That's a very dampening feeling. And so, one of the things that I had to do was shift my mind from thinking about achievements and really thinking about fulfillment. And going back to college for me, I remember now I've been to five colleges, maybe even six. I've kind of lost count. I've only graduated from two. But on my quest, I believe I started with business initially, and then I was like, I don't know if this is for me. And then I said, well, I'm going to do nursing, and then I said, well, I don't know if that's for me either. Now, could I do both? Sure, but is it fulfilling? I was like, I don't know. I don't think that it is, and so as I moved forward, I was like, okay, what do I want to try, Michael? Like, just don't be afraid to try things. And so I moved from nursing to journalism, and I moved from journalism to human services, is what it was called. And then I just said, you know what, you gotta settle on something. And so I got my associates in business administration. And then I believe I switched to marketing at some point. And maybe that was it. I believe that was it. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna just stop here. And I was like, I have all of these credits that I've taken for all of these things, and none of them seem to be like a perfect fit. But all of these things someone would tell me would be achievements. And so, in the business sense, right, I had to ask myself, are you good at business? Yes. You've always been very good at business. People have, from a very early age, seen you as kind of like a savant in business. But is that what you really want to do? Or is it something you're just really good at? And I started my own business right out of high school. Actually, I started in high school, but I had my first storefront right out of high school. Actually, graduation day, I opened up in the mall. But I was like, "Is this it?" And then I was like, "I don't think that this is meant for me. I don't know. I'm good at it, but I don't feel like it's feeding me." But I was achieving. I was achieving, and I had people that were around like, "Oh my god, I can't believe that you did this." And I recognized it for what it was, but it was just not fulfilling. The applause was not fulfilling at all. And so I did a couple of businesses and I was like, okay. But I never really felt like it was for me in that way. I was like, this is not it. When I think about nursing, I spent a long time in the field as a nursing assistant and then later on a med assistant or med aid or what we would call the person that administers medication wherever you are. But I spent years in that, probably 9 or 10 years in that. And it was an easy way to get in, to a program when I was in high school to make money. So have multiple streams of income very early. But also just if I wanted to go into nursing, like I'd kind of have like a leg up already, right? I would have a leg up. Now I didn't set out to be a CNA. I always meant to be the QMA. It was a qualified medical assistant. However, in school, the program was only offered every other year. And so, when my counselor brought it to me, he said, "Hey, there's this program." And I said, "Sure, yeah, of course." My aunt was a nurse. And I was like, "Okay, I'll do that first, and then I'll probably go to nursing. That's a good career." But somehow he had it wrong. And he was like, "Oh, it's actually a CNA class." And I was like, "Well, how much different can that be?" Listen, if you know, you know. However, um, quickly went to a semester of nursing and did not go back for that. And journalism, I was like, okay, journalism, maybe I'm going to be a writer. I was like, I'm going to be a writer. I've always been an avid book reader. I was like, I am going to be a writer. Yes, I'm going to write. And then I was like, well, what would you write? What would you write? Would you write for a fashion magazine? Like, would you be Miranda Priestley or something thereof? Like, what would you do in journalism? And so I spent about a year in the journalism program trying to decide if something would just resonate with who I was. And I was like, nothing is really resonating with who I am. And all of this technical writing stuff, I'm like, I mean, I like it, because it's logical. But I'm like, all of the citing sources and all of that different stuff, all of the things that it really takes to write pieces, like, I mean, and really write pieces, not just get up there and put opinions in, but to really report the facts and to do it in a way in which people are willing to receive it. I was like, am I going to be like a news broadcaster? Am I going to do that? I'm like, I don't even want to be on camera. So no, you know what I mean? I was like, no, I don't think I really want to do that either. And then there's marketing and I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe I'm gonna be good at marketing because I probably could sell anything to anybody. And, so as I'm going through marketing, we're doing advertising, we're doing writing slogans and things like that, which are all great creatively for me, by the way. I love when I'm able to jump into my creative chops. But I was like, am I going to write jingles for the rest of my life? Am I going to write slogans for the rest of my life? If I had to wake up every day, is this something that I'm going to be, comfortable doing? And I was like, no. And so I withdrew from college and I was like, I don't want to waste any more time or money, right? Student loans. I don't want to waste any more time or money on this. Like I really don't. I don't want to do that because I feel like I was hitting a brick wall. I was like, what is going on here? And so I was like, okay, I have a degree already. Let me see what I'm going to do with this business degree. I was like, I'm going to do something with this degree. The degree didn't end up, I mean, honestly, I say to even today, um, the degree hasn't afforded me any opportunities, at least not on its own, right? I don't think maybe it assisted in some way, but the degree itself didn't mean relatively anything. Nobody cared that I had an associate's in business administration. They didn't care. And I remember even as I started to take off in a different direction, in a more professional capacity, no one ever asked me about my degree. Not a single person. And I was like, wow, isn't that interesting? Now that's not to say that it was worthless, but I was just like, wow, okay. All that schooling I did, all those credits that are sitting there, will you go back and use them? Will you not? And so when I made the transition to human resources, it purely was happenstance. It purely was happenstance, but it was meant to happen that way because I had been doing the CNA thing. I had taken like odd jobs operationally, Best Buy, Verizon, all of these things. And I was like, okay, I want to break into more, big box retail operations, and I was like, I want to do more. I just want to do more in that. I want to be the manager. And so I sought out to do those things and it just was not working. It was not working. I was like, oh my goodness. And I was like, I'm good at this. Like, I'm good at operations. I'm good at this. Like, why is that not working? So, anywho, I went to work at a facility and I tell this story somewhere else. I can't remember which episode, but I tell this story of becoming somewhere in my self journey. But um, I meet this Heather Root. Her name was Heather Root. And she's an HR person. And I don't know why she stuck out to me because I've met many HR people over the years, but she stuck out to me. The experience stuck out to me. And even now I vaguely can remember sitting at, this small table in her office and filling out paperwork and just how she was. And so I had tucked that away. I was like, this is a human resources manager. I tucked that away in my cap and I held it for years. Mind you, this is 2000 and maybe 7 or 8. This is 2007, 2000 and probably 2007, somewhere there in 2000 and I think it was 2007 perhaps. And so I hadn't really thought about human resources. It was never an inkling in my mind, never, other than meeting her and just remembering like, hmm. And so as fate would have it, years later, I got the degree in 2010, and I went on to continue working in the healthcare space until 20 I think I let it go at the beginning of 2017 because I had one foot in, one foot out, because I was like, it's my safety net. And so I I made a decision. I prayed about it very heavily. I cried, I prayed, and I was like, I am going to have to let this go. And I was like, this has been my safety net, but it's also the thing that doesn't feel fulfilling. Like I had been in that nursing space doing, and yeah, it was fine. But I was like, this is just not, there's a no, I'm not going to be a nurse. I don't feel like I'm going to do anything else in here. So this is a dead end. And why spend a decade doing this if you don't see there being any upward movement? Like, why continue to do this? And so the burning question was like, well, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? I recalled the moment of sitting with Heather Root and I said, well, maybe, just maybe I need to look in that direction. I remembered how she made me feel. I remembered how she made me feel. And I didn't have a lot of interactions with her. I had a few, but I remember how she made me feel. And I remember being comfortable with her. And so, and she ended up moving on, but very early after worked at that facility. But it stuck with me. And so, fast forward, right? We're now in 2014, I believe, right before I made the decision to go for it. And I was like, okay, how do I get into that? I was like, how do I get into that? And so I started applying, and I'll skip that. You can go back and listen to in my self journey, that story. But the point is, I started doing it, and instantly, I felt connected. Like I instantly felt connected to the work, and it was so fulfilling. Even the parts that weren't the best, even the parts that were not the best, I was like, I don't mind. There were certain things in Microsoft Office, which was big, for a long time now. People don't even, I mean, if you can use it, great, but it's not even a big thing. But it used to be a big thing. And so even the things in there building out these spreadsheets and these calculations and things, I was like, "Psh, I got it. I'm willing to do that. Yeah, because I felt fulfilled. I felt like I was doing exactly what I was supposed to do. Not at the level that I thought I should have, but it was all a part of the journey, and I don't trade any of it. I started out as a simple admin, and now I have been, through nearly every, there's only so many levels of leadership you can go in this HR world, but I am positioned at this moment to take on this next role that I'm excited about, but I am positioned at this moment to take yet another level of this and to create another level of impact. And for the first time in a long time, I am excited about not only taking on this role, but seeing where vice president of and president of is going to take me. I see the vision for the rest of it now. And I'm very, very excited about that because it was never about the title to me. It was never about the achievements. I have certificates and recognition in there, and I think it's wonderful to get it. And I'm more, I feel more fulfilled that people just see me. You know what I mean? And that's important for me to do for others is to see them. But I don't care about being first, second, third, or fourth. I care about people feeling like I made an impact. And so when people are recognizing me, I'm like, well, thank you. I'm glad that I was able to play a small part in your journey, and I'm very, very, I feel very fulfilled in that way, right? And so that's why I continue doing the work. And if forever, if for any reason, I feel like I am not fulfilled by the work, I don't want to do it. And I think that's the thing that stopped me for just a little while, right? I think these last few years I've just been in this questioning and rebuilding and reimagining of my mind phase because I'm like, I don't want to do it just to do it. Like I want to do it when it means something. Michael, will you do region? Will you do? And I'm like, ugh, I want to. It needs to feel like I'm doing the work that is my call. I need to feel like it is. And I know other people are like, Michael, you can do all of this and you can. And I think that's great. People told me I could be a movie star, a model. Some people say I can sing. I don't believe I can, but there are people that will say a bunch of things. And I think it's great. And I appreciate the vote of confidence, but it has to feel deeply and innately fulfilling for me. And until I get there, I don't want to move forward into a space because I want to move with intention and I want to move with purpose. And I want everything I do to be able to emanate from my center, and not because I am putting on for anybody. And so when I say success is not in the achievements, it is in the fulfillment, it truly, truly is that. It's about that for me. Because on this journey, I've made barely any money and I felt really good about what I was doing. I went home every day and felt great. Now the bills, I was like, okay, now Lord, I'm gonna need you to intercede on my behalf, and I'm gonna need you to expand and expound on these finances because now this ain't gonna be enough money. but ultimately, right, it worked itself out. And I just remember going from making 1250 in my admin role and probably making I can't remember 23 $24 I think in my first hourly leadership role. I think it was like 23 or $24 if I'm remembering correctly. And I remember, making $30. And then I remember salaried being, $75,000. And, I remember 50,000 too, or 45. I remember 45. I remember 55. I remember 75. Um, but as I've moved through, right? There was a point where I was like, and it was 75,000, or actually it was 72,500 to begin with, actually 72,500. And I was living a very comfortable life. And I was like, it's a very comfortable life. And I was like, "Pfft, I'm good to go. I'm good to go. I get reimbursed for my mileage. I have a house, I have two little dogs, and I have a partner, and my daughter, and so I was like, I mean, I don't have any real wants or really any real desires or anything that are not being met right now. Like I felt in that moment so fulfilled in my life. That period in time, I felt so fulfilled. I felt like I had really achieved happiness. I was like, that is happiness to me. Now, there were ups and downs, there were challenges, but it was the time in my life where I felt like everything was as it should be for a time. For a time, something happened at that 72.5 mark. It ended up being 75 before I left. It may have been a little bit more, but I got a raise or something. But in that time period, I was comfortable. Everything seemed okay, and I was like content. And I was going to work every day at I had a few locations at the time, and I would go between the two, and I'd show up and do my rounds every morning and, get my coffee, go back to my desk, work through my things. But there was a period where I looked around my office. I just looked around the office and I was like, it's empty. It is empty, and I started playing with the space, and I was like, "Okay," and it's something that I do, try to frame the energy in the room by furniture and adding things, and so I did that, and I said, "Okay, something." I was like, "Something is empty in here. Let me just maybe I need to just switch it up and get the energy moved in the room a little bit different." And I did that, but I came back into the office, and I said, "This still feels empty." And I remember one day I leaned back in my chair and I put my feet up on the desk, kind of like you see sometimes Whoopi the Associate. I think one of the covers, I really love that movie, but I remember I think one of the covers she had her hands behind her head and she had her feet up on the desk. And it may be a bit have been a scene in the movie too, if I can remember correctly. But the point of it is I put my feet up on the desk and I began twirling around in my seat, and as I was looking around, I was like, "You've made it." I was like, "You've made it." I was like, "You've made it." And I had big windows, and I looked out the windows and I could see the whatever they were, geese or some kind of bird. I think they were geese or something like that. And I could see them flying in the distance and landing on the roof and stuff. And I was like, "You've made it. You are in a corporate building and you are making, my God, $75,000 a year. Oh my goodness, you made it. You were good at 50, but at 75, you are just amazing." But I remember I kept coming to work, and I feel like I'm making a difference and people are giving me in the moment recognition and I'm making things happen and I'm challenging people in all the ways that I can. And then I realized that I'm just content. And then I realized I was just content. I came in, I sat down one day and I was going through my emails and I was like, "You could be doing more." I just remember saying to myself, like, "This is great, but you could be doing more. Like, you really could be doing more." And so I tried to shake that off and I was like, "Well, maybe, this is fine. Like, be grateful where you are." And it wasn't about, being ungrateful. It wasn't about not realizing that I was blessed to have come so far. It was truly about fulfillment. It was truly about using this gift. And I was like, "You need to do something else. You really need to do something else." And so I looked in within that organization to do more. I was like, "Is there any other opportunities? Like, what else can I do?" They talked about expansion for the HR team. There was a role that had just been recently filled, and they were like, "Gosh, if only you would have, stepped up at that point." I'm like, "I know, right?" But everything happens the way that it's supposed to. And I remember going up for the position. It was a regional position. I ended up going up for a regional position. And it wasn't about my qualifications, it was about my identity in some way. It was discrimination in my identity in some way, shape, or form. I can assume what it was, but at the end of the day, that's how it ended. And so that was my stop sign. And I was like, you could either stay here and be comfortable and be content, or you could leave. You could trust God and leave and know that you are meant for more. And so I remember interviewing for all of these jobs and there were like so many no's. I was like, "Oh my goodness, did I make a mistake?" I was like, "Did I make a mistake?" And I was getting to be restless and I was like, "Well, maybe I shouldn't have put in my notice. I should have just whatever." But I was like, "Oh, God got me. It's going to work out. It's going to work out." And then the opportunity came, it showed up in my inbox. It showed up in my inbox, and I was like, At first, I almost ignored it, but then I was like, let me see what they're talking about. And the process lasted for so long that I had accepted another job offer. I had accepted another job offer, and I was gonna go ahead and start. I was like a week away from starting at that other job, but something just kept saying like, reach back out and see where they are, because I had went through all of the interviews and there had been communication, but there had been no offer letter. And I'm like, listen, I need something to happen before, I need something to happen. And then this position relocated me. And so I was like, I need something to happen. And so I made a phone call and I was like, hey, I kind of at a place where, I have another offer on the table and I just kind of need to know, like, if we're moving forward or not. I want to be able to make the best decision. And I got a call back and it was like, hey, from my boss, shout out to Kirsten. Shout out to Kirsten. She's one of the bosses for me that let me be me. And I don't think that I'm not saying that in a way that any of the others did not, but I could with her, it was just very different. That it was just like I believe her leadership style and mine were identical. Well, not identical, but very similar in that we are supportive leaders, and we really want to empower the people that are up under us or with us to do whatever it is that they do, and then we're willing to support. So I think for the first time, I always had wonderful leaders, but for the first time, I had one that was just very much hands off and like hit me when you need me and stuff like that. So that was really beautiful, but she reaches out to me and she's very very like apologetic about the process and stuff, and just very transparent about what their goals were. And yes, we are definitely offering you. We're just trying to figure out like where there's a couple of positions, but we think that you would be great for this other one. It's going to be very, very tough. And it's going to be in Baltimore. And so I was going to originally go to Virginia, but it's in Baltimore. And like, I don't know if you would even be open to Baltimore. Like, I understand if you don't want to, but just very transparent about how challenging that area was going to be for me. And I said, okay, well, let me, I think it would be okay or whatever. And I think I took a day or two and whatever. And she's like, well, you just let me know or whatever. And I think I texted her back and said, listen, um, hey, I'm good with Baltimore or whatever. But here's the thing. Everything happens as it's supposed to happen, because I took that opportunity and it definitely was more money. I think when we talk about in its entirety, it was double what I had made there, and probably 3 or 4 times more than the others positions that I've had. And it was great to make that kind of money, and is great to make that kind of money. But at the end of the day, it's not about the money. It is about the fulfillment. It is about, the work. Because what I did realize in making that kind of money is more money, more problems. As the old saying goes, more money, more problems, and more taxes that come out. I tell you, I remember getting my first paycheck and being like, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right. Because I'd always been one of those people that I would calculate my paychecks before I'd get them, just so I'd have an idea of how to budget and plan and stuff like that. And I was like, this doesn't look right at all. And so I go down I get my paycheck stuff and I go down the list of taxes and things, and I was like, "Oh my God." Like 2,000 and something dollars taken out for taxes. I'm like, "Jesus." And so I just was like, "Oh, this is gonna be just one of those things." And I remember getting my first bonus check, and how much was almost half of my bonus was taken out in taxes, and I was like, God. And if you've never experienced it, right, if 15 to $17,000 of your money of a chunk of money goes right out into taxes, I think that kind of stings the first time. And so I was like, "Ooh, okay." And then I had to learn some things about money, and I had to learn about, tax advantages or pre-tax, excuse me, advantages, and I learned all kinds of things about how to make your money work in distributing them into those other programs. And so it happened, and it needed to, so that I can learn these things. Now I'm gonna forever be better at it. But it just really it really made me think about the importance of the fulfillment, and it really honed in on that idea that I'd been carrying. It's like, I don't wanna do it for the money. Like, I don't the money cannot be the ultimate reason, because it's gonna come and it's gonna go, and I keep going back to that moment where I said at 75,000, even at 50,000, if I'm being quite honest, I was like, This is more than enough to do the things that I wanna do in life. It is more than enough to do what I wanna do. The rest is just icing on the cake at this point. And so that's really kept me grounded in making sure that everything that I do has purpose, and that I look to God and the universe for the assignment in everything. I'm like, okay, so what is the assignment? Like, I want to make sure that I'm useful wherever I am. I don't want to just take a job that, number one, might be somebody else's. Like, this may be somebody else's blessing. I don't want to just hold up a spot because I can. I want to go where I'm going to be useful and where I'm going to be able to make an impact for people. And, so I go into situations that way. Now, I'm not saying that money isn't important, right? In the world that we live in, money is very, very important. And I think even more so now, the notion of really taking a dive into finances and making sure that equity is there. It's always been important, but I think even more so now, with everything and tariffs and, the supply chain and how things are being handled in those ways. You definitely rent and mortgage rates and all these things. I think it's very important that you look at that component, because equity really is about balancing your needs and your wants in life, and you have to live, you have to live, and hopefully you live comfortably. And so it's very important to me to make sure that the level of skill that I have, the level of talent, the sum of experience that I'm going to bring to the table is compensated, in the right way, in an equitable way, in the market in which we live and work in. And so, for those that do or may have a guilt around money, and you're like, I don't want to be greedy and I don't want to do that. And that's one of the number one things that, as I'm advising people in the career space, is about making sure that you ask for your worth and make sure that you have defined your value. And when people tell me they don't know how to do that, I always tell them, yeah, look at reference points, get on Glassdoor, get on Indeed Salary. They have an Indeed Salary, center, and, get on salary.com, get on there and find the median for somebody with your experience level. And if you are unsure about what you bring to the table, I want you to take whatever that median is, and I want you to go down your resume and put a price on everything that you bring to the table. I want you to put a price on everything that you bring to the table, and you make sure you spend every bit of what that median income or salary is for that, so that you know what your worth is when you walk into the situation. And then when you get there, make sure you add a little bit of tax, okay? Because nothing, at least here in the US, is without tax. So I said, make sure you add tax, okay? It used to be 10%, it might be 20 these days. But make sure you add tax, okay? Commensurate with skills, ability, and environment, and all those things, right? But more money does bring about more problems, but also I believe that problems are meant to be solved. And so, in my mind, it definitely brings about lessons and solutions. And I try to pay those forward in every way that I can. I think I've used I think, I have to stop saying I think and say I know. I know that I have used my life, my wins and my successes and my happiness, and even things that were not so. I've used them to help other people avoid pitfalls or to help other people gain extra footing because I want to leave the world better than I found it. I want to leave the world better than I found it. So, but I don't let money be the deciding factor. I let the work do it. I let the fulfillment be a part of it. And in my personal life, I think there's an intersection in all of it. I think it all spills over. If you live and love from within and you are always centered in self and self stability, self awareness and self propelment and all those things, right? In a good way, in a good healthy way, they just spill over, right? Your happiness spills over in the workplace. Your need to help people spills over in the workplace. Your need to share knowledge, whatever you have, it spills over. I'm no longer in that space where I say you need to leave your feelings and you need everything. You need to leave everything at the door. It's not possible. It is not possible. Now, I'm not telling you to bring all of your business to work, right? I'm going through a divorce, or I'm cheating, or my husband's cheating, or my wife is cheating, or they, them is cheating. Now, you don't have to bring all of that to work. Now, you don't have to do that. But I think there's always going to be some spillage and some crossover. And I think if you allow the best parts to continually make their debut and just acknowledge the worst ones, right? You have to acknowledge them to make sure that they don't take over, but acknowledge them, right? I think that you'll be great. But in my personal life, I have really, really looked at happiness in the little things, the very little things. I bought a house for the first time. I bought a house for the first time, and I didn't know what I would feel or what the experience would be buying a house. I didn't have any immediate family that had bought a home, rented. Most of them rent. I mean, still to this day. But I never knew what it was like to be in a space and the home was owned, and those feelings and those conversations. I never had them. No lens for that. So when I bought my home, I did not know what that would mean for me, right? But the reason why I bought my home was because I really valued my personal space, really valued my personal space. I wanted to be able to finally decorate and make the space feel like me, And yeah, when I was in apartments, sure, you could do all those things, but I always said, always, I was like, I'm not going all out in an apartment. I'm just not going to do it. I'll do a little bit. I'll add a few pictures, hangings here and there. If I did some painting, which I don't think I ever did in an apartment, but if I did do anything, it would be very, very minute, very, very little, because I was like, this is not really my space. And so I'd use like a vase, or I'd use some tabletop stuff to kind of feel a little bit. But I was like, once I get a house, it's gonna feel like me, and it's gonna have my energy, and that's what was important to me about buying a house. I was like, I want it to feel like me. And I also am tired of when I turn my music up, the neighbors are knocking at the door, or the security, because I moved into a luxury building in Baltimore and it was brand new. But apparently the floors and walls were thin, because every time I turned the music up, right, a little bit, even on my small speaker, somebody would be knocking at the door. And I said, I have had it. Like, I have to have my own space. I have to. And I did it because it was really about me being able to create the energy and for me to be as free as I could possibly be. I didn't do it because they say buying a house is good. I didn't do it for that. People are like, oh my God, Michael, look at you building generational wealth. I didn't even do it for that. I didn't even think about that. I honestly wanted to buy a home because it fed the need for me to have my own space and to be able to make it mine, and to actually walk into every room in my house and feel like it is me, and that I am existing in my energy, the energy that I give everyone else. That was the most important thing to me. And so I bought the house that I'm living in now. And I've gone through a range of emotions and feelings with being here. But the one thing that I am very clear on is that the happiness and the fulfillment comes from I can wake up today and decide I want to change the wall color. I can, like I recently did, I took the shelves out of the bathroom and I framed them around the TV in my living room. And, I can put holes in the walls and patch them up. I drilled into the wall. And I just remember in an apartment, I used to be so afraid of putting nail holes in the wall. And I used to be so afraid to drill to hang curtain fixtures. I mean, so much so that for a long time, I wouldn't even put up fixtures that I wanted because I was like, I don't want to leave holes in the wall but now I just enjoy being able to put as many holes in the wall as I want to. Now, I'm not just walking around here knocking holes in, so don't think that I'm saying that. But there's a certain level of liberation now when I decide to make a change and when I decide to paint. It's just so freeing for me, and that's what I wanted. I wanted the freedom to go into my calm room where I have a good portion of plants, and they're just like, I'm going to move this around. It just feels so good to have and to go sit on the back porch where I picked the furniture and I did the decorating out there as well. It feels so good, but I want to tell you the other small things that really mean a lot is just getting dressed and wearing the baggy sweater. I was getting I was getting out of the shower and I was like, I'm just going to put a robe on. But I was like, is a robe going to make me feel good today? Is a robe going to make me feel comfortable today? And I was like, no, it's not. But it's the middle of the day. You just got done working out. Why do you need to put on some clothes? And I was like, because it's going to make you feel something. And so I went in the closet and I looked around and I looked at this oversized hoodie. I mean, it's oversized in every way. It's long, it's big, it's a 3X, and it's black and white. And a lot of the colors that I love and a lot of my decor is black and white because I like the contrast. I love it. And so just think Cruella de Vil, really. I mean, not as bad, but definitely somewhere in the realm, like distant cousins. And so I kept eyeing this hoodie or thinking about this hoodie for a while. And it has a peace sign on it. So it's mostly white, but then it has a peace sign that, half of it is black. So a big portion of the thing is black and the rest of it is white, of course. But I've been wanting to put it on. I haven't worn it since I visited Dallas years ago. This is crazy. But years ago, when I was thinking about moving back, my mom came with me, and I wore this to the park that I like here. It's called Clyde Warren, but I wore it there. But I was about ugh, maybe 100 pounds heavier at the time, so 3X was quite appropriate, and of course, it fit differently. But I had been thinking about this piece hoodie for a while, and I was like, I want to wear it, but I was like, no. But for a while, and so today when I went and looked at and I looked at my closet, everything in there is really neatly put. But the section where the white hoodies was tossed up, and I believe it's because I wore one to the movies a week or so ago. I can't remember, but it was tossed up, and I was like, everything in here is pretty put together. And then I walk over here and I said, you know what? You're gonna put that on. Like, why haven't you worn it? You wanted to wear it, and then you'll put a pair of shorts on underneath. And when I put it on, I just felt good. I was like, yes, I love it. I love the way I feel in this white. I love the way that it looks. And then I sat on the edge of the bed and I put on some socks, some ankle not ankle socks. What are these called? These tube socks that I never liked, but I love now. Because my feet are always cold, but I don't know what it is about them, but I love them. I have these Nike tube socks on, and so they're mostly white, and then the Nike sign is black, and then there's a dry fit on it, so it matches the outfit perfectly. But that little thing just made me smile. It really made me smile, and that is happiness. Like, that is happiness. That is the joy. It is finding the fulfillment in all things. And so my hope is that in sharing this with you all, right, that you all kind of take a look at what you defined as happiness or what you have accepted as happiness. And if it is more so in the success in achievements instead of fulfillment, I would implore you to just do the work. Do the work to figure out why that is and lean into that thing, that little thing. It can be little, take a baby step. That little thing that says, you know what, if I just go do that one thing, it's going to make me happy. Because I think for me, it just started as the little thing. The reason why I wanted to buy a house, I wanted to feel free. I wanted it to feel like me. To some people, it's like you bought a house for that. You didn't buy it because it's gonna increase your asset. Yeah, it's gonna do all of those things. It is, but I did it because of the little thing. I wanted it to feel like me. I wanted it to feel like home. I wanted to get to create whatever I create in here, which peace and love is all up and through this house. But do the little thing and watch how the little thing creates a very big impact. And every moment is just that, a moment. And it can be a part of a larger series of moments. And what I hope is that you can look back on it like I have and say that these moments were happy and they were fulfilled. They were truly fulfilled. So, that was a hard lesson, right? I think it was hard. It was hard for me to get to, but it was one of those life lessons that I think is so important. I know that it's so important. I know that it is so important, not just to me, but for you as well. So my hope is that you go out there and you do that work. I thank you all for listening to the Michael Experience podcast. It has been wonderful. I appreciate the time. And if you are looking for ways to support this podcast, please visit themichaelexperience.com and check out all the merchandise. And also, if you want mic drop moments inside the episode, behind the scenes, into the conversations, make sure that you look at Apple Podcasts for my subscription. And I will see y'all on the next one. Peace and love, y'all. Bye.